And if anyone pops in, it's truly by accident. Hello, everyone, and God bless. This is Father Mikhail, and I've got tonight with me my co-host, Subdeacon Nectarius.
How's it going, everyone? Nice to see you again.
Back for another episode of According to Tradition. Um, real quick to anyone who watches this, yes, we live recorded this. However, we chose to record this episode private and unlisted. For one, it's Orthodox ethos streaming night, so we don't really want to step on toes and divide the viewer base. But the other reason for that, of course, is that we have an important topic tonight. We don't want this to be necessarily an hour plus long video. Rather, what we're wanting to do is bring some very important topics to light, maybe some questions that have been asked, that have been brought up to both myself and Subdeacon Nectarius. And because I have had these comments come up, which actually one of the title of this episode is definitely something that has been a question asked in the comment sections a few times. And we want to address this straightforward, straight to the point without any distraction. So we're giving it to you live in terms of the way we recorded it, but you're not going to basically be seeing this live once it's published. So it's a pre-recorded stream. So that said, let's get into tonight's topic, which is the struggle against ecumenism and what can the laity do to engage in the struggle. So Subdeacon Nectarius, this is something that, of course, we both experience a lot on the ground level. You experience it a lot on the ground level in not just in your parish life, but also with your outreach with Orthodox traditionalists and your Instagram page. Let's maybe get some input from you on maybe some of the things that the laity are encountering in their parishes.
Oh, some of the things that I've seen or that I've been written about is some pretty crazy stuff. Like subdeacon, the priest allowed a Orthodox wife marry a heterodox husband in an Orthodox church with a Baptist pastor and a Baptist ceremony in the Orthodox building.
Did that actually happen?
Yeah, apparently so.
I mean, it sounds crazy enough where it could be plausible.
Well, the reason I know it's factual is this person's a catechumen and they're just like, what's going on? Like, is this allowed or I don't know. So like that was something
I remember on my end, I had someone who had contacted me who had grown up in the parish where I'm the assistant priest at. And he wanted to get married to his wife who was not even remotely Christian. So she wasn't Protestant and she wasn't Catholic, nothing. She actually came from a Buddhist background. And he was asking if I could perform the marriage ceremony. Right away I said, no, I can't. And he goes, oh, well, could you just check? I'm like, who am I checking with? Like, oh, you want me to check with the bishop? Oh, yes, please. I said, okay. So I said, I'll tell you exactly what he says. And I ended up copying and pasting the message. Is Vladika Gabriel got back to me right away and he said, no, you're right, Father Michael. You cannot marry them. It's not even economizable. So there's that issue right there. It's not economizable if the person hasn't received a quote unquote Trinitarian baptism. And again, that's not affirming the baptism of the heterodox. It's an economia. It's a condescension for the salvation of the family. There's a reason why even when we've permitted Roman Catholics and Orthodox to get married, the condition that's placed upon the marriage is that the child is raised Orthodox. So we do not believe that there is validity in sacraments outside the church. And now you're telling me that apparently this was with a Baptist minister making use of an Orthodox temple. That is another layer.
Yeah, that was one I heard recently, and then it's just the typical stuff, or they won't baptize me. I want to be baptized, but they won't baptize me. I want to be chrismated. That's the same. It's the same old story over and over again. Just recently we've seen. Recently I've been getting messages about the Serbian Patriarchate because
Right.
what he said about um,
The Muslim.
Muslims being brothers or whatnot. I'm sure you can go into detail on that one. I didn't. I just glossed over that one. I'm like,
But yeah, it's
yeah,
like brothers in what way? Like in Adam? Yeah, but we're not brothers with these people because they don't share our baptism, they don't share our altar. And it's Brother Nathaniel had a really good video. We should get Brother Nathaniel on here sometime with us.
I'll send him a text message.
You should send him the text message. I'd love to have him come on. I'd love to talk to him. But Brother Nathaniel put it beautifully when he said, and you'll find this in some of the prayers, especially if honestly, there are some prayer books where the translations are truly inferior. The Jordanville prayer book, I'm very, very much in love with. That was my first prayer book, and it words it beautifully when they say to in one of the prayers to the Theotokos that thou art the mother of the Christian race. And Brother Nathaniel pointed out so wisely in the short that he released not too long ago that when you're baptized, you're no longer just the old man. You're no longer the old person you were before. You're now a member of a new race, the Christian race, a godly race.
Mm-hmm.
And we are no longer what we were before. And so to say that, we're brothers with these people, a lot of the time, this, forgive me, is an effeminate emotional appeal for some form of moral secular unity that is shallow at best and at the worst is an opportunity for perennialism to seep into the church.
Mm-hmm.
This belief that all paths lead up the same mountain, and if a certain bishop who most certainly is not going to waste his time listening to us, and we're certainly not wasting our time listening to him, but when word gets out, you got company.
This is my cat Oreo. What are you doing?
Yeah, Elder Ephraim wrote about his cats in St. Joseph the Hesychast.
You're not really Orthodox if you don't have a cat. That's why Mount Athos has them everywhere. Right?
It's true.
What are you doing? You don't
That's
even
for
fit there.
Orthodox guys. But it's they're not your brothers. Okay, like you can have love towards these people. You can have philitimo, but that love is incomplete if you do not wish to see them united to Christ, and if you think you can encourage that unity in Christ by affirming their current beliefs. And so I think that kind of brings us to our first point and what the laity can do to engage in the struggle against ecumenism. And that is simply to not affirm it.
Yeah.
And to call the hierarchs to account, really.
Yeah, it's interesting that we talking about Brother Nathaniel because him and I talked a few days ago, or about a week ago now, when the OCA, who I call the Metropolia, I like that old term. I like old things, so.
Well, you're a history maker, so.
Yeah, so when they put out that. So when they put out that heretical document, the essentials of, was it the essentials of Orthodox Christian belief or something like that? That heretical document that they put out, or by Father Lawrence Farley,
and other authors.
Yeah, Ancient Farce Radio sponsored or something like that.
Ancient Farce.
Yeah.
Yeah. To anyone watching this who's maybe new and inquiring into the world of Orthodoxy, there is surprisingly a lot of Orthodox content out there. Like you're going to get bombarded with channels and media outreaches, and by far the largest conglomerate, and really the only Orthodox media conglomerate, is Ancient Faith Radio. However, there's a lot of problems with Ancient Faith Radio. Everything from views that are definitely outside of the church and outside of the teachings of the saints and the fathers, to out and out ecumenism, in which they even will invite Protestant ministers to come on the show and talk about theological talking points, which just confuses listeners. It confuses people.
They also have hosts who are pro alphabet soup, Skittles, Skittle loving, Skittle promoters, all that stuff, all that weird stuff.
Alphabet soup Skittles are really, really, it's incompatible with orthodoxy.
Yeah, no matter what they say, sorry.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, going back to the Brother Nathaniel thing, that document or that video he put out on him himself being from the Jewish background, and just from even from that perspective, saying no, it's not the. For those who don't know, the OCA recently put out a heretical document that stated the con- contemporary rabbinic Judaism, the Trinitarian deniers are uh, believe in the same God as us.
That they are, and I quote directly from this, a true religion.
A true religion who worships the same God.
There's only one religion. It's this. It's
Yes.
this. It's not. It's not the Star of David. It's not these. Forgive me. It's not the rabbinic Jews. It's there's one. There's one true religion, and
Yes, that was something that came out recently. So there's stuff like that we're seeing, and it just seems to be never ending. So last week it was the heretical OCA document, and then this week it was the heretical statement from the Patriarch of Serbia and his, you know, who Islamic
calling the
brother
Muslims
thing.
brothers, and you know,
Yeah, and today someone just sent me a video of Putin like kissing a Quran or something. I'm like, just
pulling the JP too, and that's the other thing. Like the Catholics, despite what they say, they, with how they canonized a pope who kissed the Quran, who held an ecumenical prayer event in Assisi in which they never once addressed the Trinity in prayer. They never once named the Son. They never once mentioned Christ, the Holy Spirit. None of that. It's just some ambiguous, faceless deity. It's not our God. And so, really, we can't call these people brothers. They're brothers in Adam, and that's about it. We all have, we all come from the same human nature. But those of us who've been regenerated in the baptismal font, we're no longer part of that same line. We've become cut off. And that's why baptism has replaced circumcision. The circumcision was meant to represent the cutting off from the world and the setting aside of the people of God from the rest of the world. Now we have that in our baptism, and Christ has become our Pascha, as St. Paul has said. And there's people on the new calendar celebrating Saints Peter and Paul today. I'm old calendar, so for me, that's that's not till the 13th. So it's one of those things where when you start mixing a little bit of the, as Saint Joseph of Hesychast put it, when you have a fresh pool of water, by the sea, and a little bit of salt water gets in, you're not going to get that salt water out no matter how clever you are. It's no longer fresh. And that's the danger of ecumenism. People go, oh, Father Michael, Subdeacon Nectarios, you guys are so harsh. You're always railing on the ecumenists. We need unity. I've seen that comment on my Instagram when I posted the other day the quote from St. Gabriel of Georgia, who said ecumenism is a super heresy. And I had a guy get upset and say, oh, that's disgusting, attacking the words of a God illumined saint, of a holy elder who nearly died burning down a 2-story tall banner of Lenin in a fit of holy zeal.
It's a great icon. It's a great icon.
Go watch The Life of St. Gabriel of Georgia that was recently put out by Trisagian. It's probably the best thing you're going to find on it. There's not even a book yet out about the life of St. Gabriel. I really wish there was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you think we're zealots? Look at him.
Yeah, that's a great icon, by the way. That's a really good icon.
It is an icon, by the way. I'm glad you mentioned that, Subdeacon. There's churches with that painted on their walls of him setting Lenin's banner on fire.
Yeah, you can't be a communist socialist and be Orthodox too. If you doubt that, read my book on Metropolitan Philaret and see what he has to say about communist and socialist. Right,
link in the description.
Yeah, link in the description. Thank you. Yes, it's yeah. So what are the things? That's what we're really here for. Is what are some of the things that we could do? What is that? We get this question tons.
Well,
Would you go for it?
I'll go first, and we'll just kind of go back and forth on this. So the first one that I'll repeat it because I mentioned it earlier, is to not give your assent to it, not to stay quiet about it. If you're noticing ecumenism being promoted in your own parish, have the decency to say something to your priest. He may be well intentioned, he may be making a mistake, and he may be open to correction. There are good priests out there who truly are just trying to do the right thing and just may not know any better. Maybe they haven't read too many saints. Maybe they haven't read the lives of saints. Maybe they haven't read the letters of holy, metropolitans like Saint Philaret. Maybe they haven't even read some of the homilies by Saint Elder Ephraim. It's one of those things when you give your silent assent to it, the clergy, the hierarchs, they're going to think that this is the direction they're supposed to go. And sometimes they truly just don't have the discernment. Sometimes for them, the world gets in and that salt water is now mingled with the fresh. So rule number one from my perspective, don't give your assent.
That's a good one. I would say the next for me, and this is what I do constantly, challenge the narrative. Always challenge the narrative. Don't ever just buy hook, line, and sinker what anybody has to tell you. That goes if, speaking just from someone that teaches, people always have an agenda, whether they know it or not. Certain people, they want you to, I have a clear example. There's someone that gave me a list of church fathers to read, volume 1 of that. They said, read these ones. Ignatius, Irenaeus, skipped over Cyprian, and follow, basically said, read all these but Cyprian. I was like, well, why? Cyprian's right in the middle of that book. Why wouldn't I read that one? And then, because, St. Firmilian's talking about corrective baptism. If, when those who are, those catechumens who are still with us need to be baptized, and those who are not are ranked among the catechumens, and you should be baptized. Otherwise, you're rashly seizing the Eucharist for not having received the forgiveness of sins. Or, the rest of the controversial baptismal controversy with
and for those of you
Stephen.
who think subdeacons being divisive, remember the words of the Lord in the gospel that he came not to bring peace, but to bring a sword and to divide. That he will, by nature of the truth, divide brother against brother, father against son. The list goes on. So continue, subdeacon.
Yeah, so that's one thing, is you really got to challenge the narrative on these things, because there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't want you to read because they want to keep you in line with the official narrative of they want to keep you, they don't want you to be open-minded because they don't want you wandering off and learning something they don't want you to learn about. If you read just in some of these, you've probably seen the podcast. For those watching, you've probably seen the podcast that we did I think it was a month ago, where I was talking about the history of the old calendar Church of Greece and the Rokor. That history, I even got challenged by someone just in Rokor recently that was, oh, you're wrong. I was like, are you sure? How do you know that? Because you've been told that? Did you look? How about these documents? And the person wrote back, well, I've never seen these before. I don't know how to answer that. I was like, well, there you go. Challenge the narrative. There's no good. So exactly. That's one. Challenge the narrative.
So with challenging the narrative, I think the next follow-up, rule number 3, don't remain ignorant. Be, as subdeacon mentioned this right at the end of our first ever podcast that we did, and that is, be responsible for your orthodoxy. Educate yourself, read. Don't just sit there and expect it to be spoon-fed to you, because if you do, your spiritual life is going to be extremely unfulfilling. If your spiritual life, your prayer life is built off of just quote mining or getting, the cool little pictures of the saints with the quotes that, we put up, that Orthodox Ethos puts up, or that PNP occasionally puts up, your spirituality is going to only be that deep. It's only going to be 1 or 2 lines. And the rest of that deep well that they pulled those little gems from has a whole lot more waiting at the bottom of it. You're never going to learn about prayer. You're never going to learn how to discern. You're never going to learn what the fathers have taught and reacted to and how they resolve these situations. So many people think St. Paisios was this borderline hippie. He was extremely outspoken against St. Paisios the Athonite. He was extremely outspoken against ecumenism. St. Joseph the Hesychast, Elder Ephrem, all very outspoken against ecumenism. St. Porphyrios, St. John of Kronstadt was highly anti-ecumenist and anti-perennialist. And some people go, oh, he prayed with a Muslim. He didn't pray with a Muslim in a Muslim temple. He didn't even pray in Muslim prayer. He told them to pray because their husband had fallen sick, this Muslim woman. And nothing happened. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to pray to my God. You just follow me. And so she imitated him. She followed him. So she was led to pray properly. And then her husband was healed. And this happened so that they would know where the truth was, because then these people, did they remain Muslim? No, they converted to Orthodoxy. So don't be ignorant. You don't have an excuse with the internet, with the ability to order Orthodox books and have them shipped to your front door. There's no excuse for ignorance.
Yeah, I'd like to. That's a good point. And the other thing going in that same vein is, don't think you know it all, because you don't. Don't think just because you're a priest that you know it all. Don't think that because you're a reader or a subdeacon or whatever you are that you know it all. Just because you got a master's degree or whatever doesn't mean you know it all. And I'll tell you, just for my in my life right now, over the last year, I've been getting further into the history of ROCOR in the Old Counters Church. And I met somebody a year ago, shout out to CG. I'm sitting, he's a layman. He's a little older than I am. I'm sitting at this man's feet. I have learned, he has every document, every book, every PDF. He knows dates, times, locations. He is a absolute well of information and history about the Old Counters movement here in the United States and in Greece that it's been invaluable in learning. And I'm going to be sharing that here recently in an article, some of the stuff on the history of the Russian church abroad and the Old Counters Church. But that going back to what Father was saying, don't think you know it all, because I have a master's degree in history. I've read probably every Old Counters book out there, and I'm learning so much stuff just from a layman that I met. So don't think you know it all. Don't be too proud.
And don't assume we know it all either. Don't assume that just because you throw a question at us that we're necessarily going to have the answer right away.
Mm-hmm.
And don't despair if we don't. We'll certainly look into it. We'll do our best to come up with an answer. But we're also human. We have limited time. I have children. I have a parish that I'm very involved in, that I assist with. I have spiritual children that come to me for confession and guidance, and so I have to give priority to them. And as much as someone can be well read and have a lot of answers, if you're not a person of prayer, you're never going to get anything. You're never going to understand to the fullest extent everything that you're reading. And that brings, well, it's your turn next. I got another point that I'll add, but it's your turn. So you kind of added on to the point that I made. Don't be ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a next thing that the lady can do? What would be another point?
I think for me, and this is my favorite, don't be silent. Don't be silent. If it goes back to that, that post 9/11. If you see something, say something. If you see your priest allowing, a heterodox marriage, and it's Pastor Billy Joe Bob from the Baptist, Pentecostalist church, and he's doing some heretical ceremony. If Billy Joe Bob's doing some fake wedding ceremony in your Orthodox temple, and you have a question about it, don't be silent. Don't be afraid to speak up. Write your bishops.
Yeah, if your priest won't listen, write your bishops. That's what they're there for. They are the archpastors of your diocese, and so their whole job is to guard their flock. Their whole job is to know what's going on, and if they don't know, what can they do about it? I've had to coach some people even in my diocese on what to do when they've had issues in their parishes. I'm like, well, have you written to Vladika? Oh, no. Well, why not? Oh, well, I don't want to trouble. You're not troubling him. He wants to know. He wants to do his job. He wants to help his priest. That's what a bishop's supposed to do. The bishop isn't there just to give validity to things. The bishop isn't there just to be a card that you can flash and say, oh, this is my bishop. I have this authority. The bishop is ultimately there to shepherd, to guide, and hopefully to help keep the parish, the priest, and everyone else accountable and on the patristic path.
Yeah, there's a quote from St. Basil the Great, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's silence is consent. If you're not saying anything, it's your fault. You're the reason. You're the reason it's happening. You're just as guilty as a person doing whatever it is because you know it's wrong and you're not speaking out. Or like St. Theodosius the Studite said, I might be mixing the quotes up, but like, who am I? Oh, I'm just a soldier. I'm just a layman. I'm just a cook. I'm just a subdeacon. It's like, that doesn't matter. If you see something that's out of pocket,
just that one lamb that Christ will go back for too.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to speak out. I'm not saying don't use my method.
Why are we even Orthodox if we're not going to speak out? We're Orthodox for the love of Christ. And yes, we can be patient and we can endure.
Yeah.
But if by honoring men we offend God, to quote St. John Chrysostom, who said, we mustn't worry about offending men if by honoring them we offend God. So if we are giving our assent to things, then we got to put on the brakes and say, no, enough is enough. So yeah, don't be silent. It's a great point. I like that. That's point number 4, folks, to repeat for you. Don't be silent.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit, is the silence thing. Is just people are just intimidated by, I don't want to rock the boat. I was like, rock the boat. Rock it. Like, it's not going to get fixed unless, and then a lot of the bishops need to know, because, the bishops are, imagine being a bishop. You're one bishop in a see, in a diocese of 500,000 Orthodox Christians. Do you think they're going to know everything? No, they're not going to know everything. So unless you point it out to them.
He's from one end of Canada to the next. Canada is a huge country. In terms of land masses, it's massive. How is he going to know everything?
My bishop's all across the world. So he's, all of the East Coast, and then he's, in Europe, and he's the first hierarch, so he's everywhere. He's super busy.
Yeah. So Metropolitan Nikolai he's got his hands full. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to know what's going on.
Yeah. And God give him strength for his.
God give all the pious and good Orthodox bishops strength. And that's the thing, a lot of people charge us with being zealots. And then see our stream, we're pretty collected, I'd like to think. And people think, oh, well, because of our association with Orthodox ethos, and this is just due to misinformation from certain types of people out there, that we're anti-bishop. We're not. We're not anti-bishop. We love our bishops.
Ben Cabe.
Ben Cabe. We love you, Ben. Please, it's been silent lately, which has been nice.
Thank you.
Hopefully we're getting on to the same page. We love our bishops. We do. We love them enough to tell the truth. We love them enough to say, hey, wait a minute. This is not right. This is going to confuse people. This is going to put souls on the line. Because of some of the actions of some of the bishops, like the EP, the Goarch, Archbishop Elpidophoros. Sorry if you're listening, Your Eminence, but you've confused some people to the point where they're leaving the Orthodox Church, or they don't see anything wrong with having communion in Catholic churches, and they're eating and drinking unto condemnation at this point. He who drinks from the cup of a schismatic will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. St. Ignatius of Antioch wrote that. If you're going to say you know better than a man who learned at the feet of the apostles, who when he was, by the way, Holy Tradition, fun fact for people who might not know this, apparently, according to Holy Tradition, St. Ignatius makes a cameo in the gospel. He's the child that Jesus sits on his knee. when he says, "Let the children come unto me, unless you be like this child." Holy tradition states that that was actually Saint Ignatius. So
Yeah. And when we're speaking out, don't be like me. Don't be. Only certain people can get away with being so blunt and direct. You know, you can't do that. Because there's only room for one of them.
Deacon Nectarios is a former police officer, former soldier.
Yeah.
He talks like this because it's part of what made him him. And let's face it, we need honest talkers. We need people who can cut straight to the point.
I might hurt your feelings, but I'm not going to lie to you. So if I hurt your feelings, you can cry about it later. But at least I know, just know that I'm being truthful.
And you know what the Desert Fathers say about tears, guys? So all the people out there who cry because of Jay Dyer, you're healing.
Or you're healing. Or maybe you just have a soy gospel, to quote him.
Soy gospel. But it's true. And that actually brings me to my next point. Don't water down the truth. Don't promote a false understanding of the gospel. A lot of people want to portray Jesus like he was this hippie nice. There's a reason why there's 4 different emblems for the evangelist. We have the man depicted with the wings, the angel, and this is because Christ isn't particularly in the Gospel of Matthew revealed as the Son of Man, which is a figure attached to Second Temple Judaism, which of course is speaking to him being the Messiah. But in Mark, it's emblemized by a lion, because Jesus' kingship in particular shines through in the Gospel of Mark. He's a king. He's the Messiah. He's the king. He's the perfect sacrifice, hence the ox being used to portray the Gospel of Luke. And of course, the eagle for St. John because of the lofty theology. And this shows the majesty of Christ as the Son of God. There's nothing soy about that, guys. He says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Well, you can't be coming through him through multiple pathways when Christ himself makes it very clear that he established one church, not churches. And he did not establish his church upon Peter. A read over of the Greek and seeing the difference in the grammar used will tell you that it's a different subject when he switches from Petros to Petra. The gendering of the word is different, and unless we're going to apply left-wing politics to Peter, which we can't, and we never dare will. He's not talking about Peter when he says, "Upon this rock I'll establish my church." So the point that I'm getting at is, don't water things down through an anachronistic modern lens. Don't say, "Oh, we need unity." We don't need false unity. Exactly. There is no unity to be had amongst Protestants who don't baptize as we do. There are oneness Pentecostals out there who don't even believe in the Trinity as 3 distinct hypostases. There are people out there, there are now Protestant sects who are actually professing Arianism, Nestorianism, who deny that the Mother of God, the Theotokos, gave birth to God, and will say that she was merely Christotokos. That's Nestorianism. We cannot water down and have a soy gospel and obtain salvation through that. What about Jesus and all his warnings about the weeping and gnashing of teeth, the outer darkness? "Depart from me, I never knew you." He says all these things in the gospel that are not nice guy things to say, but they're truthful. They're painful. They're truthful. There's a lot of tares that are sown amongst the wheat. And you have to do the job of sifting through that in your life. You have to do the job of realizing that if something's not lining up with the steadfast truth of the gospel, what the Holy Fathers have taught and what tradition has held to, if it sounds remotely modern, remotely politically correct, and something that just doesn't line up, reject it. Pray about it, reject it, seek help, seek guidance. And if your priest is basically just Jim Bob in disguise, and he's saying that the Catholics have a Eucharist and that the Muslims are our brothers, will run from him.
Rabbinic Judaism is the same God as us.
Yeah, honestly, at that point, you want to help that priest, tell him he's wrong. Don't just say, "Clarify for me, Father." Say, "This statement is misleading." He could have meant something different, But hindsight's 2020, and saying that after the fact doesn't undo the damage that it's caused. And if you're not the person who should be writing these things and your synod's asking you to, tell them to find someone else. Better for you to preserve your soul than to get pulled into things because of what? Accolades, acknowledgement from your first hierarch. At the end of time, it is not your hierarch that's going to judge you. God certainly judges us through the mouths of our spiritual fathers, of our elders. This is why obedience is so important. But obedience is not to be carried out when that obedience disobeys Christ. If your bishop is telling you to start, going along with, or your priest, hey, we're going to start professing Historianism, are you going to stay with him or are you going to leave? And this is what I've told some of my brother priests who believe in this complete blind obedience to the point where there's no discernment whatsoever. And obedience saves. Obedience is important. If your bishop starts saying, hey, I want you to start professing this from the pulpit and it's Nestorianism, are you going to follow him on that? Or are you going to say, no, this isn't what we believe. I can't do this. The choice is in your hands, and I hope we all know the right choice to make at that point. So that's my point there.
Yeah, not you don't have to go as far as Nestorianism. It's like, oh, if you're a priest and your bishop's like, yeah, oh, that so-called homosexual couple that's there, yeah, commune them. It's fine.
They're not married and they're living together. Commune them.
No, it's fine.
No,
right?
No, you could be harming those people. More than anything, don't water down your faith.
Yeah.
We don't believe in a soy gospel.
No.
Thank you, Jay Dyer.
Thank you, Jay Dyer. That was hilarious.
Thank you for a lot of things. That line, fantastic.
I know. I was actually watching that, and this must have been like 1 a.m, and I was my wife was sleeping, and I had my headphones on, and I heard that, ooh, the soy gospel. I was like, I was laughing. I was tears laughing. It's hilarious. I was like, that's something I would have said.
Yeah, you gotta, and that's the thing. Like, there's a good example of a guy who's not afraid to say the truth. Do you think he cares what people think? Do you think I care? Do you think some deacon cares? No, and you shouldn't either. The only person who you should care about what he thinks about you at the end of the day is God. Don't offend Panahia. Don't offend your guardian angel. Don't dishonor the saint whose name you took in baptism. And for the love of God, if your priest is saying that's pretend or make believe, then say, well, why do we call you Father?
Mm-hmm.
You have 10,000 instructors in Christ, but not many fathers. It's not make believe. When you take on the name of a saint in baptism, that's your name. What is more real, the name that is written on your birth certificate, or the name that God calls you? I'm a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. The name I had before my baptism, I never use. Never. And I hope to remain a citizen. I hope to do that. So yeah, that's my point. No soy gospel. Don't water down the truth. Don't accept a watering down of the truth. Fight for it.
Yeah. The other thing that I've been getting lately is because there's all this stuff going on all over the place. Father Peter told me once. It's like a few months ago we were talking. It's something all the time, every day, day in and day out, something. But I get this all the time. These people that are in these like modernist new counter jurisdictions or whatever that are just, they're off the chain, female, what do you call them? Acolytes, or what's the term? Yeah, something like that. Acolyte, or
I still get people trying to argue with me on that.
Female.
There's always been a case for female altars.
That's it, female altar servers. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. It's like, yeah, female. If they're doing female altar servers, if they're doing, if they're dressing up as subdeacons, with the Aurarians and.
And here's the thing: if you're hearing priests say things like, "Well, when it's at a female monastery, I need them in the altar to assist me." Suck it up. Do it by yourself. My rector, my rector and my beloved mentor, Father Vladimir, who's he's made appearances on this channel. He's going to be actually coming back on soon. Going to try and help him get set up to do a talk like this with us at some point. I think you'll like him. He's very much in the same line of thought as we are, and he was pre-union ROCOR as well. He was ordained well before the union happened, and he told me when he was at the women's monastery there before he was rector here in Ontario for Christ the Savior, he had to serve the altar by himself most of the time. So he was getting the incense for himself, lighting the candles himself, having to do everything by himself in the altar. And he did it. And I've seen him do it. Before I was ordained, before I was even serving there were nights where I saw him serving solo. And he's in his 70s, guys. And he was serving solo. At that time, he was in his late 60s. So what kind of excuse is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
That's point number 6, no excuses.
Yeah, I mean, talked about like extreme example. I mean, just for what if they're in a women's monastery? It's like, are they in a women's monastery? No, you're in a parish in Columbus, Ohio. That's not the same thing. But it's gotten to the point where people are like, the jurisdiction is not going to change. Their priest is not going to change. What do I do? And ultimately, I know people don't agree with that. Is leave. Why are you there? I mean, I know there's a lot of people that, I gotta stay and fight this jurisdiction. I was like, I'm sorry, but Go Arch is going to be Uniates in 2 years.
There was a letter from Saint Father Seraphim Rose about that very issue, about not being able to change an entire jurisdiction to a certain young man who's now not so young anymore. He's a metropolitan. You know what I'm referring to. Certain letter. And he told him, don't expect to change the OCA. Don't think you're going to do that. And sure enough, he was there in the OCA for a while. He's certainly not anymore. He came back to ROCOR. Nothing changed. In fact, it's gotten worse. So don't expect that you staying in your parish, especially it's like in the case of certain Greek parishes that have a HEPA in them, which are basically just Greek Freemasons, that you're going to change it just by sticking in your parish. You're not. You might have a positive impact on a couple of people, but at the end of the day, it's not going to say good things if you're sticking around till the 11th hour and you're literally leaving midnight the night before, things get signed between Constantinople and Rome in 2025. Because, for those of you who are going, well, they haven't explicitly stated, they've publicly stated they're changing the date of Pascha for anyone under the Ecumenical Patriarchate to celebrate at the same time as the Catholics. What other purpose do you have from disjoining yourself from the whole of the Orthodox Church and the Lenten Triodian? And when we celebrate Pascha, what other choice is that for other than a false union with Rome? There's no benefit to it otherwise.
And as far as the heretical Go Arch goes, that's not even new. If you go, not Go Arch, just the Ecumenical Patriarchate in 2016, during a divine liturgy, they had, who was before Giglio? What's his name? Borgiglio. What's the Francis before
Bergoglio?
Francis? Borgoglio. Benedict. So before, so I think it was Benedict. Yeah, it was Benedict.
Yeah, Benedict was before Francis.
Yeah, so in 2016, the Ecumenical Patriarchate had a divine liturgy where Bartholomew was outside the iconostasis with Pope Benedict, and the priest in the altar during the liturgy commemorates the Pope of Rome before Bartholomew. Papa Benedictu, go look it up, 2016. And then they give each other the kiss of peace, like they're priests serving in the altar. From my knowledge, priests that are not even invested don't even give the kiss of peace. It's only the ones that are serving, right? Am I right?
Yeah, like if you're serving, then yeah. I mean, depending, because like if you have a ton of priests there for a hierarchical service, even if you technically don't have anything to do, and you're fully vested, you still do engage in the kiss of peace with the bishop and with your brothers.
But if you're
Like
not
that's
vested, right? I might.
not, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're not vested, then I don't know what you're
Yeah.
doing on the altar. I mean, as a priest, if you're in an Orthodox parish, at minimum, you have to be vested in your epitrachelion,
Yeah.
especially the commune.
So yeah. So going back to that, in 2016, he's already prayed. They prayed with each other. They've already commemorated him liturgically in Constantinople. I mean, hello.
Yeah, the signs are all there, guys. They're waiting for the final formality, and that's. I mean, they already changed the calendar, and people back then were calling it. The old calendars were calling it and saying, "What's next, Pascha?" This is all just to rejoin with them, and here it is, essentially 100-year-long plan come to fruition. So that's how long this has been going on for, 100 years, easily,
Yeah.
and
It's only.
it's coming to a close.
Yeah. It's only gonna get worse. It's only
So,
gonna get worse.
what can you do, and what's the next point? I'd say we can round it off with a nice number 7. What would you say is the last point?
Spread the message.
Spread the message, and I'm going to add a sub point to that. Spread the message, and don't stay if the issues aren't going to get solved. Don't put your soul at risk. Don't be tempted. Then you're going to fight, and you're going to fight needlessly with people where you're going to be throwing your pearls before swine. But spread the message.
Yeah, that's it. Now it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning: is you have to be yourself educated. Like I was listening to Father Philippe the other day when he's like,
Wonderful, wonderful priest monk.
yeah, he was saying, you're involved in all these sins, but then you want to go fight the demon of heresy? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Or,
Read the prayer from Uncut Mountain Press. Actually, that's a good primer for why you shouldn't, until you've dealt with certain passions, you shouldn't try to fight the demon of heresy.
Yeah, I was years ago. I was talking to this bishop, and he was telling me about a lot of these kids that they come in, they've been Orthodox for like a year or two, and it's like, these guys, they can't even keep their hands out of their pants, but they're gonna try to teach anybody about how to be Orthodox and be zealots. Like, let's work on the passions first before trying to keep
That's
your
a
hands
beautiful
above.
way to put it.
Yeah, I mean that was so. If you're dealing with these other things, don't
Clean your plate.
yeah, clean your plate before you start teaching others. And
There's that thing, you have to be perfect to engage in the fight. No, but if you're mired in all your old passions, you haven't made any progress. Don't try it. You're gonna get beaten up. You're going to get so beaten up, you're not going to even know where to stand, which way is up or down, or you might fall into apostasy. The demons might drive you nuts.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're still, they're not going to, we're going to be super careful not to reveal names or identities. But when you struggle with certain passions and you're engaging constantly in things and you haven't cleared those passions, the devil will get in there and use that very thing that you still haven't removed to pull you as far away from Christ as possible. We know more than one, but we know of a young man, and we know several. I know several who have had this happen. They couldn't get over their passion of vainglory. They couldn't get over the passion of lust, or just their own emotional neediness. And women have caused these guys, and men have caused women to fall out of the church completely. They go into apostasy. They made grandiose statements of how this is the true faith. These guys are heretics. But their prayer life fell apart the moment a girl broke their heart. The moment a boy let them down. Prayer life falls apart. And then the truth becomes harder to discern. They maybe meet someone later, and that person pulls them out of the church, either into an apostate sect or into a pagan religion altogether. So, fighting the demon of heresy is not for the faint of heart. You got to fight the heresy within yourself first.
Yeah, it's definitely, because you can lose You can fall into despair because you keep seeing these things. Like every day, someone sends me something new. Like I was saying, someone today sent me a picture of some female reading the epistle at some Antiochian church, and then earlier this afternoon I got a picture of Putin kissing the Quran, and then the Serbian patriarch, and then the oath the Metropolia is publishing heretical documents. It's like if you're not grounded in your faith,
That'll take you down.
yeah, it'll wear on you. But
And there will be days where you'll be tempted, even if you are, where you'll be tempted to despair. I mean, as a priest and doing this stuff online, I get emails all the time that will just break your heart. People sharing heartbreaking stories, people being rejected or not taken seriously by their priest when they want to be baptized, not chrismated. The tools are out there for us to do better, for us to be better. And if you're a priest who's watching this and maybe this is pricking your conscience, well, glory to God. Do something about it. Don't be sorry, be better. Seek forgiveness and just be better. You might think, well, who are you to talk? You're a junior priest, you're a subdeacon. I'm not speaking from my own opinions on this. I'm not speaking from a place of saying that I have any wisdom. I don't have any wisdom. The Holy Fathers have wisdom. The saints have wisdom. Wise metropolitans, godly priests, people who we canonized and who we've prayed to, they have the wisdom. My bishop has wisely guided me on a couple of pastoral matters, where he said, "Yeah, no, we can't confuse the boundaries of the church here. These things stay in place as they are. Don't go outside them." And I draw from that, and that's where this comes from. It comes from people want to say, "Where's your love? Where's your love?" Here it is. Here it is. This whole thing, this whole podcast that Subdeacon and I do, it is a love letter to the church.
Yeah, it's people, for those who do have read my articles, and if you notice, my opinion is not in them. If you go down, scroll all the way to the bottom, there's nothing that I need to say that hasn't been said by some saint or some metropolitan already. So my opinion is not needed. I will quote, just like one of my new favorites, because I've found a way to translate his writings, is Metropolitan Anthony Kropivitsky and his opinion on the new calendar.
And if Reader Justin is watching this from Windsor, there are people working on the things we talked about. He was saying, we need to translate more of his works. And we're like, yeah, you're right, we do.
Well, I translated a few of his letters, and having to do with the new calendar. And most people know what my opinion about the new calendar is, but he called it, repugnant. I mean, I don't need to say it. He said it. So,
and then we have to understand why he said it. Well, I think 2025 is a clear reason why it is.
Yeah.
It's always repugnant when shepherds are deceived and then they in turn lead people away from the sheepfold of Christ. Of course it's repugnant.
Yeah.
But why is that? It's not because we say so, but it's because it's a fact. It came from an illumined man, an illumined bishop, who could see the danger that this posed to his flock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another point. Point that I just I thought about is, in addition to spreading the message and helping for those that are able, that are on steady ground enough to do so. In addition to sharing that message, the other thing that you can do is for share, like for instance, Father Peter stuff on Orthodox Ethos. Share them. Put them out there. That is, I mean, in today's world, that's gold. One share on your profile could be seen by 500 people.
Share the wealth. Share the spiritual wealth.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the points that I had. Always challenge the narrative. Educate yourself. Don't remain silent. Don't be scared. This is, If you're scared to go to church, there's a song for the 2000s. If you're scared to go to church,
Yeah. If you're scared, go to church. That's actually I'd say the perfect final point to end off on. If you're scared, go to church.
yeah,
It's a refuge. It's a hospital. It's a fortress against the demonic storm that rages outside in the world. I mean, it's June. Look at it. You just have to walk out your front door half the time.
yeah, no,
You can see the demonic agenda everywhere. And
That-
that's why whenever I go anywhere, especially in June, and most of the time I do this period, but I always go in my cassock and in my cross. Is if they're allowed to defend me, oh my God, then they can put up with this.
yeah, especially in June.
You got a cross to bear. You'll have a cross to bear. And for those of us who struggle in the church for truth, who love the truth, it's not the end of our cross. We're not going to fix this problem overnight, and we know that. But if we even help just one person from the stream, it was worth it.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. I've written a few of these articles. Just the other day, just something not polemical, because I wrote an article on the wedding rings and why it's placed on the right hand. I had like 5 people write me and said, "Oh, Subdeacon, I loved your article. I put it back on the right hand where the church left it."
Glory to God.
I mean, how cool is that, right?
That is really cool.
Yeah.
I like how that's worded too, right where the church left it.
So
let's do that. Most of the time, when I'm out of cassock, I wear my ring, but Vladika doesn't let his priest wear his rings and serve. So
yeah, you can't do that. Yeah.
Can't.
But
you're not kissing the ring with me. I'm not the Godfather.
Yeah, but those are the points I had. Hopefully they learned something.
Yeah, and the points I've had, I stand by, and I pray that anyone watching this will just look to dig deeper. Look to serve God in truth. We're here to worship in spirit and truth, not in the spirit of compromise. So remember that. Remember that compromise it's not holy, it's not heavenly, and it's not love if it's dishonest and it's just being said for the sake of being nice. So don't worry about being nice. Worry about being honest. Because at the end of the day, that is what's going to save someone's soul, is you being honest with them. Don't be a tyrant. Don't attack them. Don't insult them or disparage their character. Don't affirm that they're right either. Hold them accountable and guide them. Guide them as best as you can. And if you can't, if you don't know what to say or do, that's fine. That's what these are for. You pray.
Yeah. And also know that not everybody has the ears to hear. I mean, you might be preaching, the perfect message, but some people just ain't willing to hear. So keep that in mind.
Read the parable of the gospel where Jesus talks about the one sowing the seed. Read that parable. That'll give you some comfort.
Yeah.
There are people who denied the Lord and they saw God face to face. Don't expect that people can't deny you.
Yeah, so
all right.
That's what I had.
And that's what I had. And I think that's a good point to end off tonight. Guys, if you have any questions for me or Subdeacon, please be sure to leave them in the comments. Metropolitan Philaret's book will be linked in the description. And there will be nights where we will just do kind of like an open forum live chat where we'll take questions and we'll make that the focus. We'll make answering questions the focus of that stream. But going forward, this is probably going to be the format that you're going to find us in. Let us know if you're interested in us putting this up on Spotify, Apple Podcast. If you are, and if that's something you'd like to see, just let us know in the comment section. And we are going to be getting back to a more regular release schedule. Again, this episode was greatly delayed because I went and got myself sick, and I couldn't really talk for a solid week. And that's why the content kind of just stopped for a little while, but we're back in action. We're ready to tackle the hard-hitting issues. And Yeah, let's see if we can get Brother Nathaniel on here next.
Yeah, I'll send him a message. Yeah, I've been busy. I've been writing this, and this article is long
Hey,
that I'm
well
writing.
researched
So
articles, and I'll be looking to send some paperwork your way too.
sounds good, Father. It's good,
All
good
right,
being with
thank you
you
so
again.
much, everyone, for tuning in. Keep us in your prayers, and remember to say your prayers and to stand up for what's right. God bless you all.